Smiles, everyone, smiles. I am Mr. Rourke. Welcome to Fantasy Island. No, it's hash rate. My name is Mark Jeffrey, and my guest today is the great Blake Hooper, who's putting up with my nonsense of the Equalizer exchange. So hello, Blake. How are you doing?
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me on, Mark. Really appreciate it. Look forward to running through some content here.
Yeah, I'm. Thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for being so flexible about the time once again. So you don't know this probably because I doubt you've watched all the hash rates. But the very last hash rate was kind of a primer on DeFi for the lay person, and I did it in front of the LA CEOs group with like a deck and everything. And it's meant, and it was kind of like explained for dummies, our world, and it was like about an hour long. One of the things I talked a lot about was Curve. So we have a new contingent now coming into the podcast, so they know what Curve is. So I just want to start with that real quick. What was Solidly? Let's talk about that for a second, and how that improved upon Curve, and then we'll talk about Equalizer and how that is a fork of Solidly.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, so go ahead. I was going to give you the floor.
Look, I think if you start off with Curve as that initial stage where they built an ecosystem that was allowing you to bribe, but earn the fees that are produced from this protocol that houses liquidity. So Curve was that original, entrant to the market. It obtained a lot of stable coins or a lot of stable assets on their network, and their TVL grew really, really well. The fees and then the bribes were given back to the token holders. And I think that really is the start of this. Some people laugh, they say, stop calling it real yield, but I think it's sort of taken off. Do you know what I mean? Like, everyone's on this, it's real yield. And I sort of, I'm happy to sit on that same wagon. But I would suggest it was the start of that real yield where they weren't inflating a token without giving something back to those token holders, which provided utility and value.
Yeah, so you mentioned bribes. So I just want to stop you for a second there because the audience, the new cohort coming in, they don't know about the bribes. I didn't go over that. And it sounds horrible, right? It's like, oh my God, there's bribes in this system? So, so they know about the pools. So bottom line is that if you have control over the voting power, to incentivize the pools, people could come in and offer bribes on top of the Curve rewards in order to incentivize people to put liquidity in that specific pool, correct?
That's it, yeah. It's basically to incentivize lazy liquidity. So some stable coins might not have as many fees, so they wouldn't obtain as many votes. So what you would do is you'll bribe that inefficient liquidity to ensure that your token or whatever you're trying to match there in that liquidity pair is incentivized for people to vote on it. So I'm not sure exactly how far you went into the system, but Curve was the initial VE, so that vote escrow model that allowed people to vote and return them with fees and bribes in that following.
Yeah, I stayed away from that whole thing. Basically what they know is that Curve became the deepest pool of stablecoin liquidity due to the low slippage. And I talked about its role in the DPEG of Luna. I kind of focused there mostly. I didn't get into the VE stuff, but I will with you. So, okay, so basically what Solidly was, this time last year roughly, was by Andre Cronje, basically a Curve killer. He basically figured out a way to make a much better version of Curve, and he launched it, but it had bugs in it. It basically had a design flaw, which was quickly exploited. And broke all of our hearts, all of us who invested. I did invest in it. But we all knew it was absolutely the right model. Like the machine was good. And it was really this year, kind of, I guess, end of last year, beginning of this year, that a new class of clones of the original Solidly model with these problems fixed and with augmentation started to appear, of which you were one. So Equalizer is basically a Solidly clone with augmentation, but I'll let you tell me what Equalizer is.
Yeah, so I think if we just drop back to Solidly for a moment, just to explain to people that progression from Curve, Andre took the curve model, which had a stablecoin swap system, and then he added your Uni V2 model. So everyone familiar with Uniswap would be quite familiar with how you swap there, and there's liquidity pools. So it works very similar to curve, but it uses a different mathematical equation to serve volatile pairs. So Andre decided that he was going to improve upon the swap mechanisms or mathematics of the stable coins, and he came up with a better equation. So he improved that with Solidly, and he also put the ability to have a Uni V2 engine in it as well. So now you've got this dual or twin AMM, which allows you to swap not only stable coins but the volatile pairs, like an FTM ETH mix or an FTM USDC mix. And Andre put that out there, and it had a great take up where it took the Uni V2s that were spitting out these tokens that had no value, like we see, because if you bought that token, you're really getting governance of a platform, and I sort of wonder how valuable that governance is, and emitting these tokens. What is going to happen to the value of that token over time? Is governance enough to incentivize the price action in the direction that most people would like? Andre came up with this idea that basically he would create a flywheel. So you would have your fees came in, and they didn't incentivize the liquidity like a Uni V2 model. Those fees were then circled back to anyone that bought into the token and locked it. Okay? So it created this flywheel mechanism and gave utility to the token that was then emitted to the pools. So I'm not sure if everyone's level
No, they
of
probably don't know about that. But just to comment on that for a second. So he was imitating Ohm when he did that, right? And it was less about getting more tokens than it was about preserving the token holders who were locked against dilution. So it wasn't really like you were getting anything. You just weren't losing stuff if you were locked, correct?
The locking of it was more to get people to use that game theory and lock for the incentivization of those tokens. What he did similar to Ohm was he put in a system where he named it a rebase, or whether they name it the same as well, which basically protected you from dilution. So if you entered into that system early, then you would maintain the percentage of ownership of that system. So I suppose it sort of segues into some of the areas that we adapted and changed off that model. So
tell us about Equalizer and how you guys have modified it now we've got the base set.
So what we did is after and like Andre came up with this fantastic idea, right? And he names it the primitive. And it obviously didn't go exactly to plan, and there's a little bit of a longer story that people could find out there. But we took that system, and we, especially the team, the early entrants to our team, we analysed it from every angle, and we tried to improve upon it. So we were like, what do we think we could do to improve this model? Because we think it's the future. We just think that we can do it in a different way that improves upon it. So what we did is we basically got a model that had already been forked, Velodrome, and removed some of the issues that were first faced. As you said, there was some ability to manipulate the bribing system and things like that, and it didn't work as planned. Velodrome did a very good job of coming up with a way to mitigate that and fix it. And we took their model. What we did is we had 6 months of research to understand what areas we would have improved upon. So Andre's system had a 0.01% fee, and it was designed for volume. Okay, to give you a comparison, Curve runs a 0.04% fee. So we took that fee on the stable coins and we upped it. That was across the board. We upped it to 0.02%, the same as Velodrome, but we went a step further, and we were the first to get that volatile pairing fee structure and take it to 0.2%. So we basically got his fee structure and we times it by 20. Now people will go, how can we want lower fees? Why would you increase it? But we saw an issue that it would not support liquidity unless it had a fee structure that was able to support that liquidity, like what we'd seen in the uni swaps, in the sushi swaps. So we went with a model that was much closer, and that enabled us to draw more liquidity.
So let me rephrase that. So basically, you saw the fee structures that were popular elsewhere as not being enough to draw liquidity of sufficient size to actually go after something like Curve or Uniswap. You needed to imitate their fee structures in order to reasonably attract the volume of liquidity necessary to really make this thing go. Is that correct? Did I get that right?
Yeah, exactly. Because if the fee, when you think about it, the fees are going back to the people that own the token, and if we can increase those fees by 20%, we create a desire for people to own that token, and that is the great utility of equal. People want to own the token because they know that 0.2% for every trade that happens on the day is going back to the pool they voted on and going back to them in the percentage share that they voted. So it's this fantastic model where these tokens are now supported by the fees that are coming through the platform. So to give you a small example, Equalizer today is sitting around $12.5 million in volume, and most of that is volatile. So to do quick math on that, and if we called it 12 million at volatile, that's $24,000 in fees for the day that's then sent back to these owners of these tokens. All they need to do is lock the token. We took Andre's model and reduced the 4-year lock, and we made it a 26-week lock.
I saw that. That was really interesting. Yeah. So people want to own the equal token as opposed to the competitor Solidly Forks or even Curve, because if you lock it, you're going to get a lot more in terms of the fees out of the equal token than you will out of anywhere else, even as much as maybe 20x from what I've read. Is that correct?
Well, exactly. So it's 20 times the fee structure, and that supports more liquidity, which gives you a better swap rate anyway. So like we're doing the math now, and we're on FTM. We do believe it's a very strong contender for layer one.
You're Phantom. On the Phantom chain. Yep.
We're on the Phantom chain. We believe it's a very, very strong contender. But this week, after doing our analysis, we are the number one DEX in fees and revenue taken for the network as a whole within 3 months. So we've basically become the number one performing DEX based on the amount of revenue that we've taken in, if you include our fees and bribes, within 3 months. So I think you're starting to see this model that was able to go out and be deployed and now start to produce more fees and revenue for the token holders than the top DEX within the system that's been running now for over 2 or so years with that DEX in play. So we've been very impressed with the adaptations we made to be able to quickly come up and support an ecosystem that we adapted off the Solidly model.
So that takes care of the equal holders and stakers. What about the liquidity providers? Do they also likewise see increased fees?
Well, they actually get the equal token given to them based on the vote that they get on their pair. Obviously, if you bribe or get fees, people have incentive to vote. And equal sitting at about $13.40, I think, as we were about to jump on this, is now, we're actually minting out each week about 48,000 at the moment at $13 a token to support this liquidity. So you get this action. So these people are willing to put their liquidity in play because they earn the equal token, and then they've got options. So they could obviously, market sell that. They could keep it and hope for a price increase over time, or they could lock it and participate in earning the fees that at the moment for anyone that's locking veEQUAL is earning over 100% per week. 100% per annum, week on week now. We've displayed that same APR over 100%. And to give you a small comparison, Curve is running about 11 to 13%. So we're doing over 10 times the share back to our token holders over that first initial invention.
Time period. Yeah. So is that sustainable over time, or is that peter out? Does that sort of decay after a couple months or something?
So what we've done with our system is most people that took the Solidly model took a yield farming curve to it. Okay?
Yep.
And the first thing we did is we thought that the yield farming curve would have possibly made sense because that's what had been used in all the other models. What we took is we wanted to put a tail emission. So we wanted to put more of a flat emission off it from day one. We didn't want this big ramp down period where lots of tokens went into the market, and we also removed the rebase. The reason we removed that rebase was to allow those tokens as they're emitted to offer incentive for new entrants to enter, because we found fault with a yield curve that goes really quickly over, say, 16 weeks, and then anyone that got in that period is then always owning the same amount of ownership of that platform. Well, after 16 weeks, you might as well throw it in the bin.
Right. Yeah, it all falls apart. So you want to basically be able to sustain over the long term. So you recalibrated the whole thing in order to have actual life after the first 16 weeks, unlike some other things.
Exactly. So to go to your point of are those APRs sustainable? Week on week over 100%. I actually don't want them to be that high. I want more people to buy equal. Like I'm hoping that,
right.
and we see the TVL rise, the fees rise, and we get down to more of a manageable level. Because in my opinion, over 100% is just crazy. Like it's not the level that we expected it even to be as high as. And right. I think people in the market with a token appreciating like this would be very accepting of 30 to 50%. And all of our modeling was done at 30 to 50%. So to see it producing over 100%, and like obviously you get a bit of inflation that occurs, so there will be a natural desire there'll be a natural push on that APR. But what you're also doing to accommodate for that is increasing your volume as well. So our whole idea is about pulling more people to Phantom. So we want to see people on the FTM network bringing their liquidity from ETH, from BSC, coming over because we've got these great incentives for people. They can operate on this really efficient DEX. And that increases our TVL and our volume over time, helping us keep a very high APR.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, and I've experienced this myself directly as well, the Phantom chain is like this magical place where like the transactions are nearly instantaneous. And it costs, less than a penny usually. Not always, but a lot of the times it does. But it just, in terms of it just runs like a dream, especially compared to Ethereum, and especially compared to pretty much everything else. I'd say other than maybe Avalanche, Binance Smart Chain, but they cheat by centralizing everything, so I don't really consider that a fair competitor. But in my mind, I think Avalanche and Phantom are sort of on par at the moment, with possibly Phantom being better in terms of transaction speed. So for most of DeFi's history, building first on Phantom was a thing, and then last year Phantom had a bunch of black swans, and between Solidly and Andre, and a bunch of shit just went wrong, and so a lot of people sort of jumped off the chain, and then the chain had a big upswing, kind of end of last year, beginning of this year, beginning of 2023. Culminating for a number of reasons. Andre came back, quote unquote, even though he really never left, but publicly returned. Just basically, and also they started doing actual marketing. And I actually went to Miami a couple of weeks ago and hung out with the senior management of Phantom. You could see them; they had a booth, they were doing things right, which is very different behavior from what they were doing before. They were just sort of coasting. I don't want to say coasting, but they were reliant upon their technical prowess. If you build it, they will come and no, you have to actually market it, and then maybe they'll come. So it's really good to see. So you decided. So it's interesting that you decided to be to basically build your house on top of Phantom as opposed to any of the other chains. You must have seen this new. Did you know that that Phantom was going to sort of have a renaissance, or were you just guessing?
Well, funny enough, we started at the same time of the run, and obviously Andre's return. But look, Phantom was for me, like a real great place to operate on. I'd done the most transactions. It was the home of Solidly, so
yeah.
we saw that as an opportunity that a lot of people that were involved in that FTM community were very community driven and based, and we saw an opportunity to work with that community that had an understanding of the product. And that was probably one of our biggest determining factors, that we knew there was because this is a complex product. There's no two ways about it. You need to spend a little bit of time understanding it. So it was really, really good for us to have that community that we could build on. And we actually airdropped them. So we brought them in really early, and they've helped grow our offering and our community. Like every day people are in the Discord answering questions for people that are newcomers, and it's just this great atmosphere. The other thing too that FTM had is the only, or the biggest DEX on FTM was a Uni V2 fork. So you don't have the competition of a Uni V3, which I think was very, very important. We went, well, we want to master a chain. We want to be the number one and take it to the top there. Let's do it on Phantom. And then what we want to do is we want to bring the masses to Phantom, because you've got the FVM being launched at the end of the year, which is an Ethereum competitor, if not, killer, which is going to be absolutely insane. So we're working in with the network that potentially has the most growth potential. You're operating for pennies to operate on the system, and even if you go over to BSC or to ARB or anything, you're still paying 60 times the amount to do these transactions. Like you're doing something for a cent here and 60 cents somewhere else. Now that makes a difference when you're doing a stablecoin transaction, things like that. So our job is to continually bring these people across to Phantom, get more and more liquidity there, and I can even see us building that stablecoin market out to heavily compete with Curve on Phantom, simply because of the cost to transact. Like, you can do anything on Phantom that you can do on another layer 2. And people are just like, okay, these layer 2s, they've come out of nowhere and they sit on Ethereum and they go for that buzz, right? But what if you had a layer 1 that you could build on that was the future, plus you can do anything that a layer 2 can do? So we really saw potential in Phantom.
Yeah, let me rephrase something you just said, because I have a feeling we lost some people.
Yeah, sorry.
It's okay. So you said that Uniswap version 2, there is a clone of on Phantom, and I believe you were referring to Spooky Swap. There is no Uniswap version 3. And as you mentioned earlier, really these Solidly clones and things are kind of a mashup or a gene splicing of Curve and Uniswap version 3. And what you saw was that because there was no Uniswap version 3 equivalent on Phantom, you building your house there, there was open field where there wasn't a similar open field on Ethereum or some of the other chains, correct?
Yeah, and just for anyone listening, you did say Uni V3, but you meant Uni V2. Obviously, just for anyone, so it's a mashup of Uni V2 and Curve, but Uni V3 is a different model, and it does have, if it's on chain, it can be a difficult one to compete with, especially in your startup phases. The good thing with this model, and people say, is Uni V3 like a threat to you? I sort of think you get a really simple farming attribute when you use this program or this protocol, because not everyone wants to be like managing day and day. People want to set two assets together, pop them in a pool, earn, come back in a week, do their normal life, right? That's not exactly always how it works out, and there's a lot of learning curve to move into providing liquidity on these other platforms. So I think we saw that opportunity to provide this really good experience for people where they could just basically provide liquidity on Phantom, and the fees were going back to anyone that owns that equal token and locks it.
Yeah, and theoretically, liquidity is mercenary, so it should always gravitate towards where the highest fees are. In theory, I don't know if it always works that way, but that is the theory. I do know that Solidly, when the original Andre Solidly launched, I think I saw it have something like 4 or 5 billion, maybe even 8 billion. I can't remember what it was. It was in the billions of liquidity. It was giant, right? Do you remember what the top number was?
I think it was up. It was definitely up in the billions. You could be right. I was looking at it the other week, but I can't remember the exact number.
I think it was like 8 billion. Yeah.
Could have been 4 billion across the whole network from memory, but at the same time, we're coming out of the back of that where people thought we might continue a bull market.
The comparison is unfair. I agree. I'm so people know like the size that it was. And then what is Curve right now? Do you know that number offhand?
Well, I'm more looking at the Phantom curve, not so much Curve sitting over there.
Curve proper. But the goal is to take Curve proper and basically become the new Curve on Phantom, right? Like that's really what you want to do. I'm guessing, right? That's what I would do.
100%, and that just means keep drawing TVL. And already we're doing more volume and on less TVL than Curve. We've surpassed Curve's TVL on Phantom already. So, but you're right. Look, you'll always get people that are going to operate on Ethereum on Curve because there's people would say that there's it's the most prominent layer. They want to operate on that. They're willing to pay the fee because some of these people are swapping $1 million in USDC, right? Yeah. So the $6 fee doesn't matter to them. We probably want to get more that bottom end stuff where people are switching 10 grand or 5 grand sort of thing.
Yeah. So right now, your basically your TVL at the moment is 43 million. So a far cry from the billions of yesterday, but you're just starting, so that's okay. Solidly ETH, which is sort of the Roosh run Ethereum-based competitor. Last time I checked, they're at 75 million now. So they were kind of sputtering for a while. They had a bunch of drama with Mo Solid. I'm not really sure exactly what happened there, but I know it was a big deal, and then it seems to have sorted itself out. So now the TVL is coming back. THENA, which is another Solidly fork on BSC, Binance Smart Chain, I just went and looked. They have 150 million. So it's good. Like these things in aggregate have about 500 million, it appears to me, in liquidity across all the different chains. So the race is on, it appears.
Yeah, the race is on, and funny enough, we put out a Twitter poll yesterday to try and obtain what are people thinking is the most important thing, and TVL is really important, right? Don't get me wrong. Sure. We actually are ready. If you want to bring your liquidity over to Phantom, bring it over because our APRs are so high. But in Phantom historically, you might pay a little bit more than you would on an ETH layer, right? So we want to get that over because we can support a lot more TVL than what we are at the moment. But the biggest metric, I believe, and from this poll, it's sort of showing, is the APR on your tokens. Now, at the moment, that's leading the poll as the number one. Now, if you look at all of the comparatives, Equalizer is the number one returning APR on your investment if you're looking to purchase veEQUAL, veETH, or whatever it is, veSolid, whatever you're looking for, we're actually at least double what you're returning on the other one. So I think the biggest metric for us that we're after is how do we keep people's APRs high? Because at the end of the day, TVL is great, it provides volume, but we need that volume in TVL to help make sure that we give you that APR. And that's where we're very different, because our tokenomics were built to generate APR, hence the Equalizer model or Equalizer name. We put in an equalizing sort of system that expanded with volume as we grew and rewarded people with such a high return to really get them enthused and operating. Like if you can make an investment today in anything, let's just say you put in a stock, you get a 5% return. Wow, people are doing that knowing that the price could go down. Imagine if you could do that and get your money back within a year, plus still have that asset, which is, we didn't go into a tradable NFT, which can then be sold at any point during that path, potentially at a higher price. Like, people were buying equal for $1, and now we've got people selling these because it locks it into a little NFT, right?
Yeah.
And people are selling these now for $13 per piece. So they've got a 13x on their money, and they've been earning 100% APR for the last 13 weeks. So it's crazy to see the potential of what can happen with these Solidly models.
So great arbitrage opportunity right now. Get some equal, lock it into veEQUAL, and sell it as an NFT. And, at least for right now, that's a great arbitrage opportunity. So nice.
You take the earnings. And the other thing too, which we've really expanded upon, which is we're sort of leading the charge on this as well, is we've started adapting the NFTs and making them data driven. So all of our NFTs now, if you go into PaintSwap, actually take contract data and produce nice analytical graphics for people, so that you go in there, because the standard ones are very basic, right? They've just got a couple of numbers on them. Whereas ours actually have images and they're full SVG. So we've gone that step further there, where we've taken that NFT and we're continuing to build in that space. We see a lot of opportunity, and I know Andre did, around the enhancement of this financial NFT and taking it to the next level.
Very, very interesting. So I've watched I'm friends with the FRAX guys, and I've known them before they were FRAX because they're here in LA. How interested is FRAX in the Solidly world, to your knowledge? Are you talking with them? Are they reaching out to you guys?
Yeah, we've made some we've had some chats with FRAX. More of an intro from your side would be great, but
Sure.
they work as a DAO model, so obviously proposals and stuff like that need to be in play and voted on to get those rewards. Look, with everyone that we've gone to, we've sort of taken this huge jump where we went in and we just did a lot of BD work, like building up these relationships, and then relationships have started really flowing to us. We've got a bit almost 20 bribers this week, bribing on the platform for different types of liquidity. And we're seeing people come over constantly. Can we whitelist on your platform and basically then bribe? So look, FRAX isn't doing it at the moment. We see a lot of potential there. I think there's a great opportunity, but there's a lot of great opportunities still out there untapped, because when someone bribes, they actually get a higher return in equal to their liquidity. So they get a really efficient outcome. So if you put $1 in, if you bribe $1 at the moment, you're probably getting back about $3 to $4 in equal back to that liquidity. So if you own the liquidity, or 50% of the liquidity, you're getting $2 back to $1.
Right.
So there's some really good arguments to say, hey, let's get our liquidity on there. Let's bribe that liquidity and get it voted in.
Well, I know the FRAX guys were they are extremely interested in Curve, mostly because their future depends on the liquidity of Curve, at least at the moment, being where there's a huge amount of stability and liquidity for the FRAX, stablecoin token, and so they basically control most of Convex, which controls most of the voting power. So the Solidly world, I don't know if they perceive it as a threat or it's another opportunity, like it's another property to kind of own. I'm not sure how they think about it just yet. So, but I'm happy to make that intro because I do know those guys fairly well. So I'll do that for you, no problem.
That'd be great. But I think you're right. Even from my perspective, as an onlooker, you go, well, they're so heavily involved in that Convex situation. Is it a threat? But then, they are bribing on other platforms as well. So, look, I think there's opportunity there for anyone, because as you said, especially these stable coins, they need deep liquidity to ensure they maintain those pegs.
Yes. So, how much do you know about the Mo? I want to ask you, do you have your own Convex that's sort of like a sister token and protocol to you, like Mo Solid was to Solidly? And apparently, I don't know what happened. And if you know what happened there, I'd love to hear your take on what happened with the whole Mo Solid situation, if you know.
Look, I try not to comment too much on that sort of stuff, only because I was a Solidly investor, I was a Mo Solid investor, I was an OXDAO investor. I I just don't think it quite worked out, the gelling of the two teams. There was definitely some issues very present, and for anyone to see that went through the Discords. I think you can be like we base a lot of what we're seeing on liquid wrappers based on that experience, and I think as soon as you put a liquid wrapper, so MoSolid, for anyone that's not aware, is a liquid wrapper of solid. So they get that NFT, the VE NFT that's created when you lock it, and then they create a wrapper, a liquid wrapper that can then be done as a one-to-one version of that. Now, it can go on the market as an ERC20 token and can then be traded. So you're basically breaking the lock that Andre created for this system to work, right? So I think you take away a bit of the clunkiness that makes the system so good. Do you really want to create this liquid wrapper? And then this liquid wrapper offers a better APR because it then spins some other metrics into it to try and enhance that APR. But then you basically take buy pressure away from your initial asset, in our case equal, in their case solid. So do you really want to have double the amount of pressure needed to buy these tokens to ensure that they put pressure on the liquidities or incentivize these liquidities? I think it's it's definitely
like a derivative.
Pardon? Yeah.
It's like a derivative, right? I know you call it a liquid wrapper, but it's sort of like rehypotheticated voting power token, which is now again liquid. So
exactly.
I agree with you. That's bad. I agree with you. That's bad, but yes. But now you could. I mean, but somebody's going to do it. No matter, like if you're successful, somebody's going to rehypothecate the equal token in its stake state. No matter what, like somebody's going to do it, right? Like I don't think there's no way to stop it.
No, there's not really a way to stop it. I suppose it's from our perspective, we just look at it and we're looking at every angle on it, and will we support it? You know what I mean? Like we've thought about it multiple times, and then to see what's happened with MoSolid is just scary, right? Like
right.
you basically create a system where if you drop off peg, then the people want MoSolid more than your original asset. And
right.
like if the APR is 3 times, why would they ever buy this asset? It's almost like this. It can be,
like
it can be a little bit dangerous. So look, there are ways to obviously mitigate it if it came to that point, but I think keeping it as a native asset makes a lot of sense from what we're seeing and what's happening out there in the market. You know, time tells, right? And that's the biggest thing to have a look at. It might work today, but will it work in 3 months? And we're here for the long haul, right? We don't want people coming in, buying equal, and finding out tomorrow that all the value's been extracted out of it.
Right. Yep. Totally agree. All right. Well, we're coming up on the 40-minute mark. So before we go, tell us where we can find you on Twitter and on the web, and all the socials.
Yeah. So definitely. So Equalizer Exchange on Twitter. Equalizer OX, I think, from 0x from memory. If you're looking for that, if you want to pop onto our exchange, it's equalizer.exchange. Twitter's a really good place to get like our link to our Discord. I definitely jump in there. What we believe is this product is not something you want to do or work or use unless you got your handheld and you're reading our docs and you just really get in on the information. Our YouTube, we're building that. We've just taken on someone there to help us push out more and more YouTube content. So even you can hop onto there, and we do a lot of tutorials. So if you get onto Equalizer and you're having a look, you'll find heaps of mediums to find us.
Yeah, this is for the new cohort on my podcast. This is the advanced class. You don't want to screw around with this if you don't know what you're doing. So it is the advanced machine for sure. So.
Get on and have a look at that. Like I'm a video learner, right? And you like to make videos, so or YouTube clips or whatever you want to call them. So like we've got lots of tutorials. I want to see people doing stuff. That's how I learn. And obviously we do a lot of written content for people, but definitely jump on the YouTube. Start to learn the tutorials and how it all works there.
All right. Well, it sounds great. So, Blake, thank you so much once again for making the time. My name is Mark Jeffrey. This has been Hash Rate. We'll see you next time.